Welcome to the Virtual Reality Reconstructionist, the podcast where we explore how cutting-edge technology is transforming law enforcement, forensic investigation, and public safety training. I'm your host, Dr. Roger Ryan Ryder, crash reconstructionist investigator and advocate for innovative training solutions. In today's episode, De-Escalation Nation, how VR and empathy are revolutionizing police training and community safety, we'll explore how immersive technology is helping officers strengthen empathy, sharpen ICAT de-escalation skills, and build trust with communities they serve. From virtual reality scenarios to real-world applications, we'll unpack the ways technology is bridging the gap between training and practice. Speaking of technology, this episode is partially created through the help of Google's Notebook LM. Let's get started.
All right, today we're diving into a really critical shift that's happening in policing. We're talking about a fundamental move away from force and toward communication, all in the name of making dangerous encounters safer for everyone. We're talking about de-escalation. You know, it all really boils down to this one question. How do we make these incredibly tense, high-stakes moments between police and the public safer for every single person involved?
To really get the picture, you have to see it from both sides. For police officers, the risks are absolutely real. According to the FBI, on average, about 57,000 officers are assaulted in the line of duty every year. That number, well, it really paints a picture of the high-pressure world they operate in.
And then, on the other side, you have the human cost for people who are in crisis. This quote from Olache Tiffany Ito, who went through the justice system while having a psychotic episode, it just says it all. It really highlights this urgent need for a response that's about care, not just incarceration.
So faced with this really complex problem, a new philosophy is starting to take hold. And this isn't just about a few new tactics. It's a fundamental change in policing itself, moving the main focus from control through force to finding a resolution through communication.
Now, this isn't some brand new idea. It's actually been evolving for decades. It kind of started with something called the Memphis model way back in 1988. But for years, these techniques were mostly found in psychiatric settings. That all changed after 2014, when a series of high-profile incidents really pushed de-escalation into the spotlight for police training, eventually leading to a massive federal investment by 2022.
And what's interesting is that this approach isn't one size fits all. Communities are trying out different models to see what works best. You've got the classic Crisis Intervention Team, or CIT, which gives officers specialized training. Then there are co-response teams, where a mental health clinician actually rides along in the car with officers. And you even have mobile crisis teams, where clinicians can respond on their own. Each one has the same ultimate goal, a better, safer outcome for everybody.
Okay, that all sounds good in theory, right? But what about in the real world? Let's actually look at the data and see what the numbers are telling us. Is this new approach really working?
Just look at Dallas. After they reformed their training to really emphasize de-escalation, the department saw a staggering 64% drop in complaints about excessive force.
And it's not a one-off thing. In Camden, New Jersey, the results were just as powerful. De-escalation training there led to a 40% decrease in serious use of force incidents. And check this out. In Louisville, a new program led to a 28% reduction in use of force. But here's the part that's absolutely crucial. It also resulted in a 36% drop in injuries to officers. That shows that making encounters safer isn't a one-way street. It benefits everyone.
So the data is pretty compelling, but that doesn't mean it's easy. Trying to roll out this kind of training effectively across thousands of different police agencies, well, that comes with some very real-world hurdles.
A huge part of the problem seems to boil down to priorities in the academy. When you look at the numbers, it's pretty eye-opening. Recruits get on average 58 hours of firearms training and 49 hours of defensive tactics and just 8 hours of de-escalation training. The imbalance is stark.
But the challenges go way beyond just the number of hours. First, there's wild inconsistency. Some agencies do 1 hour, others do over 200. Then there's this thing called training decay, where skills just fade without constant practice. You also have very real fears from officers that hesitating to use force could get them killed. And, maybe the biggest hurdle of all, a massive gap in our healthcare system, a lack of 24/7 crisis centers, which often leaves officers with no good place to take someone in need.
So how in the world do you overcome all of those hurdles? Well, this is where things get really interesting. More and more, departments are turning to technology to completely change how this kind of training gets done.
The goal here is simple. Make training more consistent, more accessible, and way more effective. And it turns out, the emerging game changer is advanced simulation technology.
For a long time, the best way to train was live-action role-playing. But think about it. It's expensive, it's a logistical nightmare, and it's really hard to do the same scenario twice. This is where virtual reality comes in. VR simulators are basically flight simulators for police officers. They give you a safe, controlled, and perfectly repeatable way to practice an almost infinite number of situations, letting officers learn from their mistakes without anyone getting hurt.
And hey, this isn't just some cool tech gimmick. The research is now starting to prove it works. A recent study actually found that VR training can be just as effective as the traditional live-action stuff for teaching these critical skills. That kind of validation is really paving the way for it to be used more widely.
So, after all that, where does this leave us? Well, the road ahead seems to be all about combining better human connection with smarter, more innovative technology.
A safer future isn't going to come from one single solution. It's about a combination of things. It starts with the community, actually. Training civilians in what some call pre-de-escalation, to calm things down before police even get there. It relies on accessible tech, like VR, to make officer training better and more consistent. And all of it has to be built on a foundation of really strong partnerships between police, clinicians, hospitals, and community leaders.
And this brings us to our final thought. As this kind of technology becomes more and more a part of police training, it leaves us with a really compelling question for the future. Can practicing over and over in a virtual world truly help us build a safer real world for everyone? The early signs and the data seem to suggest that it can.
Thank you for listening to the Virtual Reality Reconstructionist. If today's conversation on VR, empathy, and de-escalation sparked your interest, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. For more insights, resources, and training opportunities, visit us at rrinvestigations.com and follow our work on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook. I'm Dr. Ryan Ryder, reminding you that innovation in public safety isn't about replacing tradition, but about strengthening it with tools that prepare us for tomorrow. Until next time, stay safe, stay prepared, and keep moving forward.